Hello, this is Michael Gallion with Bird Barrier. Welcome to Pro Lab. Today we have another podcast, and this is for the general population of the world out there that are looking in, not necessarily from pest control, but people who work in different industries where birds could present danger. And so what we're going to talk about are 3 ways in which bird control actually helps to prevent disease. Now, the tendency to overplay the dangers and risk of bird droppings seems to happen at times where people are trying to sell services and they might overstate. So first thing I want to do is clarify where the core risk of diseases that relate to birds come from, and primarily it's about the droppings, all the debris and droppings that come into play when a bird has, or several birds infest an area. Now, other disease factors come into play, like with West Nile virus, for example. You have corvids. These are birds like crows and ravens that become infected with the disease, and the mosquitoes can actually then transfer that disease through bloodstream into humans, right, through mosquito bites. Those kind of things are in open air situations and don't really relate to what we call structural pest control, or the areas where birds can be controlled outside the open sky, right? So it's about the birds that come in and they infest structures. And the first rule of understanding this is the enemy is not so much the bird when it comes to bird droppings, but it's actually the enemy is the nest itself, or any kind of nesting activity. When a nest, like this pigeon nest, becomes part of a structure, you have transferred into a world where you have much higher risk of disease. And that has to do with the fact that this bird is what we call a resident bird. It's not passively involving your property in its route to go from A to B. It's actually very much dependent on its survival with your structure. And therefore, all of the biological cast-off that comes from this bird, primarily the droppings and this nesting material, don't present a real crisis of danger until that debris is moved. So in other words, we compare it to something like asbestos. Asbestos is a carcinogenic material that was used in insulation. For the most part, if you leave it alone, it doesn't present a problem. As soon as you start removing it from a house, you have to have a hazmat crew come in. You have to vacate the area. You have to be very, very careful, because you're going to stir up all this dust into the air and it enters through the lungs. So the first way in which bird control prevents disease is by proactively creating preventative bird control measures, by offering those through deterrent methods, right? What we want to do is that first and foremost is evaluate a property and prevent things from happening. And that starts with the architects, right? The architects can actually design features on buildings that will prevent birds from ever nesting if they do it properly. And so often there are things overlooked that most architects don't know, where they will build slight overhead protection in areas that will draw birds in for nesting, therefore making this transition. So the first way in which we can prevent is by not allowing birds to take residency on our structures. That's the first way, and that's more or less one of the most important tenets of bird control. The preventative aspects, by building buildings in a way, designing buildings in a way so that birds are not naturally drawn. Now, as we know, this whole industry wouldn't exist if buildings don't naturally draw in birds, right? Our human structures that we build have a tendency to draw in and convert birds to residents. Now, the next method, number 2, is by solving the resident bird situation using specific modern bird control strategy. This is something that Bird Barrier has made our mission, is to bring the most modern techniques using the most modern cutting edge technologies. We have devices that are like bird spikes, of course. They do certain things in the world, and this is one of the mainstays of bird control. However, that device will not solve nesting. Birds will build a nest right into that material if they've already imprinted a site. So having this strategy built around science and offering it to customers, the people that are having bird infestation problems, is the key. So it's really important to understand this. If you're out there, you're a facility manager, you're an architect, you have a huge project that's being built at an airport, having places where bird droppings can rain down in a consistent repeat pattern due to resident bird activity is something you want to solve. If it's happening, it's already happening, you want to be able to solve it. A company like Bird Barrier, with our certified installers throughout the pest control industry, can solve these sort of problems using proper modern strategies. Now, the third way in which bird control can help prevent the spread of diseases from birds is through education, through the kind of information that I just touched on here, with the difference between, what we call passive birds that are just, kind of flying around and only using the structure as a medium or low pressure site for their transportation from point A to point B. When they convert to a resident bird, like that kind of educational information creates a real paradigm shift, especially to facility managers out there who are trying to stay ahead of things. Now, it's worth noting that we are in an era that we're calling post-COVID, right? We've just gone through this incredible era in human history of a major pandemic in the modern world. Like it's really hard to believe that we went so far back in time that we weren't able to control and prevent this major pandemic that has occurred. And the point of why we tie it in today's presentation is that customers are much more sensitive now than ever in the history of bird control to the dangers of the immune system. Bird droppings, when you're exposed to them on a regular basis, they're going to weaken your immune system, especially for people, infants under the age of 2 or elderly over the age of 65 are especially vulnerable to the dust and debris that comes off of bird droppings. It weakens the immune system. But regular warehouse workers who work in facilities, especially here in the Southwest United States, we tend to leave our warehouse doors open because we have beautiful weather. Most of the year we'll have sunny days. We don't have a lot of rain. It can be warm temperatures. We leave those doors open at the peril of bringing in all kinds of pests into that facility. It's not just birds, rodents, bugs, all kinds of insects. They get in, they spread disease, they create risk for humans. We try to, balance out those risks. We keep our pests under control, but by opening these warehouse doors and birds coming in, we're bringing those creatures into the world of a structured situation. And the diseases that they bring are a real threat, especially to people that come to work every day and they're exposed on a daily basis. So by having strategy and the right deterrent technologies that are available for the public, those are 3 ways that we help prevent the spread of disease and, of course, protection of the immune system. Now, here at Bird Barrier, we are not claiming to be biologists or immunologists, that sort of thing, but we know that from the work that we do, that by solving these infestations, especially of resident birds, especially of what we call non-native species, these birds like pigeons that are not indigenous, they create most of the problems, right? And so we see hospitals coming to us asking how to solve these problems because they don't want to expose patients to the dangers that they know that exist. There are other diseases, histoplasmosis. There's a whole list of diseases. Now, we have a lot of information about these diseases that can come from birds and their droppings on our website at Bird Barrier. We have a lot of resources available for you. If you're someone out there in the world that even has discovered this particular podcast and have information to add, by all means, reach out to us. In the future, we'd love to have people that are specializing in the world of diseases and birds. Maybe you can join us for a podcast to help bridge the gap between end customers who have bird infestation problems and the real world of the spread of diseases from some of the medical experts that are out there. So we look forward to hearing from anybody out there who's discovered this podcast for that reason. Again, my name is Michael Gallion. I do business development for Bird Barrier. We have this podcast series available to professionals everywhere. We're going to also ask you to give us more ideas. What are more subjects we should cover in our podcast series? We're very open to these ideas. This is the first of its kind. We're the only podcast available for bird control as an industry, and we're looking to expand our library as we move along into the future. So that's it for today. Hopefully this is helpful to those of you out there that are listening and watching, and we will see you at the next podcast.